All right, hello and welcome again. Thank you for everyone to join us here for the Trino contributor call on the 26th of September 2024 in our regular monthly cadence. There's a whole bunch of us already on, and we have numerous things to talk about. I'm going to switch over to a couple of things here. There's a couple of things we wanted to mention. First of all, the switch to the file system, the new file system implementations that are Trino specific and do not use Hadoop was done in the 458 release. So everyone that upgrades to that release or newer must change their catalogs. It's a breaking change, and you must declare what file system you're using. If anyone has any questions or anything, it should all be in the documentation, but do reach out if there's any problems. It's running in production various places already and should be pretty good. But of course, we're looking for feedback as usual from the community. Anything from anyone in the audience about this? Cool. Next one, exciting. Java 23 is coming very soon. In fact, the 459 release came out last night. And from what I hear from Martin now, from prior discussion here, the Docker containers should be out as well. And those Docker containers now include Java 23 as the runtime JDK.
Still working on them, by the way, but soon.
So what that means is that if you're using Trino 459 Docker containers in your Helm charts or any other way of using those containers, internally they're using Java 23. For the tarball and RPM installations, you can still use Java 22. In one of the next releases, we will be switching to require Java 23 as well. If there's any problems encountered with the Java 23, please do test that and let us know. But everything is so far looking really good. Anything else to add there, Mateusz? Cool.
There are basically no new language features or APIs, so the update is pretty non-interesting, but we need to do it in order to be able to update to JDK 24, which will actually bring some improvements that we want to leverage. So
yeah, and also the more we up, it's just another library ultimately, like all our other dependencies. It's part of the runtime environment. Next topic I wanted to mention, please do submit your proposals for Trino Summit. I know it still feels a long way away, but we do want to sort of like build up a bit of a understanding of what's coming. It's in December. We do take submissions, we do take registrations, and we do take sponsors as well. Next update, Trino Gateway 11 is out. For those of you using Trino Gateway 11, let us know how it goes. Join us in the DevSyncs. Let us know on the Slack channels. And obviously, we're working towards 12 already. Next update is about connectors. We've been looking at some of the connectors, and while we are working towards also improving the packaging of Trino, we want to get rid of some connectors that are basically not used at all and also don't present any modern use cases or requirements. So in 459, the local file connector was removed. All it did was like look at one specific file on the server for some log files. Didn't really satisfy any needs that can't be catered for with any other monitoring that's like actually more solid and better. So that's gone. If there's any problems or anyone's requiring that, please reach out to us.
Just a quick question, Dano, Martin, do you have any context on how why that was there in the first place? I've always been a little confused about it.
Sorry, which one?
The local file connector.
Oh, local file was something we built when we were at Facebook. It was for querying log files. I mean, so initially it was for querying log files within the local machine. I think it was for querying the Trino log files. It was called local file because we're gonna extend it to do other things, and then that never happened, so it just stayed like that.
It was a hackathon project.
Okay. And it was like, maybe you didn't have a good kind of log collection and aggregation and analytics pipeline, and now we all do have that, and it's not needed anymore. Is that the kind of
Yeah,
arc of time?
exactly.
Okay.
ATOP Connect is in a similar realm. The PR for that is ready to roll. It just like allows you to run the ATOP tool on, which is like a Linux command line tool for processing. And yeah, we're gonna remove that as well unless there's any objections. And that's currently planned for shipping, like the removal is planned for shipping in 460. So again, if there's any objections to that. The next one that we're also planning to remove is the Raptor legacy connector. That's a very complex connector that I think actually relies on some other infrastructure to be used. So as far as we know, nobody uses that. And it has it limits us in our development because it supports some very complex use cases that force us to implement that. So we want to remove that as well. So that's to be done, but also probably coming soon. So if anyone knows of any users that rely on that or use cases that they're trying to solve with that, please reach out. Mateusz, you want to give us an update about Project Swift?
Yeah, so basically most of the things that I wanted to implement in the spooling client protocol extension is already in the master and release with the 459. The only remaining thing is some like performance improvements to both the spooling process and the client libraries. But right now, all of the clients in Java, CLI, JDBC, and the client library, they support the new spool protocol. So you can actually like give it a spin. It's an opt-in feature, so it requires passing the encoding name to actually enforce, like negotiate the spool protocol with the server. Of course, it's backward compatible, so if you send it and the server isn't configured to use it, you will fall back to the existing protocol, so nothing changes. So you can like easily deploy it and just use it with the opt-in client configuration to test it. It supports out of the box all of the cloud storage providers, S3, Azure, and GCS. So it's like, I think it's pretty convenient. It's also supporting the server-side encryption of customer keys. So it's already secured. And the next thing that I will be working on is making the client libraries in Java performing better. There are a couple of things that I want to contribute to the JSON format that will make it slightly faster. Basically, I have a new decoder that is doing less work while decoding the JSON values. And my benchmark, it's already like 30% faster. So
wow, that's crazy. Thank you so much. That's a great update. I'm hoping that we can still put together a Trino community broadcast or some other thing where you demo this more.
yeah, and this feature is not yet documented because we want to document this when we feel that this is like production grade feature. So we don't have any documentation yet, but I think that we will ship it in a release or two.
Yeah, and then also like with regards to the clients, obviously, like you mentioned JDBC and CLI, we then want to farm, like once this is stable, we want to farm it out to other clients as well. Specifically,
Yeah.
I guess Python is going to be one of the next ones, and then maybe JavaScript and whatever else.
Yeah,
Go.
I'm actually going to prepare a document that will outline how to implement a new protocol for different languages.
Okay, cool. And then we can use that to add it to Go, Python, and JavaScript at least as our clients.
Actually, Jan is already looking into adding support to Go. So
I'm sure he is. How come I'm not surprised? Okay, that's awesome. Cool. Any questions around the Swift project and our client protocol improvements there? All right. Sort of jumping back to Java 22, I wanted to just call out that in 458, we shipped the update to use the new app compressor version or like release 3.0, which uses the Java 22 FFI stuff to access native binaries that do the encryption and decryption. It's a transparent change and should just work, but if anyone finds it doesn't do that, then please let us know. There is documentation on how to potentially fall back and configuration-wise to the old
actually,
stuff.
fallback is automatic. During the startup of a server, you will get 3 log lines, basically saying whether you have whether the library is loaded or not properly. So you will see the Z standard native compression enabled or disabled. That's it.
Yeah, I guess it's more like you can force it back if you wanted to. But
You
yeah,
can-
we would love for
disable.
people who run it on different machines and hardware and Linux distributions and stuff to let us know if there's anything happening that's not expected and like not working. And of course, if anyone has any cool performance improvement numbers that they want to share, go and submit them for Trino Summit and let us know as well. That'll be great. Next topic was someone had adding the LDAP group provider as a topic. I don't know who that was. If there's anyone here that wants to talk about that.
Yeah, this is Christian. He's here.
Okay, cool. Christian, do you want to talk about this then?
Yeah, I didn't have a topic, but I can talk about it. So this was originally started by Austin Bloomberg, I think. The issue is when I opened the initial PR, it was quite big and it had a functionality that used to map LDAP attributes of a user into fictitious Trino groups. So it would say, for example, if in LDAP we'd have that your email is Christian@Bloomberg. In Trino, you'd get a group that's called email equals Christian@Bloomberg. Now, after going through this with Dane, Dane rightly pointed out that, well, this isn't the best way to handle custom user attributes, and we should find like a proper system to do that. Now, we actually are not using this plugin anymore since we moved to the HTTP group provider. But the code, I think, is still good enough it's good to contribute upstream. I haven't really had much time to work on this, but last week I did strip out all the extra attribute logic. So right now the PR just does LDAP groups, and that's it. It does them in 2 methods. It can do like a 1 query pass. And that way you don't do filtering on the groups, so you get all the groups of someone, or you can do a 2 query pass where it will actually filter the LDAP groups it gets back.
Okay, so the status then is basically it's rebased and cleaned up, and you are looking for...
It's not quite cleaned up is the issue. So there are some outstanding PR comments that I did not get to look into. Maybe some more tests would be needed on this. There was someone from the community who said that he would be, or they would be happy to take it over. Let me actually find their handle. Well, their name is Omar on the Slack. Actually don't know their GitHub. So yeah, I will reach out to them and try to get this moving. I can, if I have some more time, I'll try to take another look at the plugin. But right now, again, we're not using this internally. I don't have a super high amount of bandwidth to look into it.
Yeah, so if there's anyone else out there that wants to take that over and help, that would be great. And then obviously we're probably looking for some maintainer to also look at it.
I can give you an idea why that LDAP would be very valuable to try and motivate people to be a little bit more involved if you want.
Yeah, sorry, I was texting David in the background. This has actually been on our list of things that we wanted to see for like ages. It's just like we wanted to have a pretty simple, straightforward one, which I think we're now at. Anyways, I think David or I will be able to help on getting the review over this.
Great.
Yeah.
The only reason we're not using an internal is we needed to go more to a federation layer because we have information all over the place, not in one LDAP provider.
Yeah.
So we have to pull stuff from many places.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think lots of people would potentially have a use for that, so that'll be a great feature to have.
Yeah. Is the HTTP group provider, you mentioned something that's in Trino? I actually don't even know what we have.
Yeah. Well, I think it's upstream.
it's internal.
Oh,
Yeah.
We
can open source it, but
yeah, we can. It's about as simple as it can be. Just send an HTTP request and it returns that list.
Yeah.
The problem is by the time we've developed something, by the time it's done with this PR process, we're already on version 2 in a different systems.
Yeah.
So, sound familiar, like Ranger to OPA, Manfred?
Okay, so since you mentioned Ranger, this is getting very close now. The contributor that took that PR over is like very active, and this is coming.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. All right, I see that Doug is here. Do you want to jump in and talk about your query column limit? I'm sorry, actually, by the way, Christian, that was it on the group provider then, right? We're good.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we said that at some point we'd look into doing some system to handle custom user attributes, but I don't think anybody has done much thinking on that. So we'll come back to it another time.
Okay, cool.
No, actually, I've done a lot of thinking on the custom attributes. Can I steal the screen share for a moment and I'll show you?
Sure.
Share. It'll just be fairly quick on this one. So I think we mentioned in the past that we need to be able to federate identity attributes from multiple locations. And there's a lot of echo in the background of somebody right now. So we're currently looking at some kind of an architecture that allows us to grab identity attributes from multiple sources, kind of collect them in, provision them, and push them into another source like LDAP. Because right now we don't really have one source of identity and information for users that we need to kind of pull across. So I was looking at changing the authorization interfaces, adding additional maps, but we've kind of discussed this before with Dana a little bit. I looked into changing the OAuth to OIDC, but nothing really gave us the ability to push everything in because we can't expect everything to come in from OIDC and the token and claims. So we're looking at kind of a way to federate user attributes into an LDAP or system and then attach Trino to the LDAP and just use that interface directly for all the information that we need to do for authorization checks on particular users. So this is kind of the direction we're going right now. It's not concrete because we have so many different systems built over decades that we have to look at. So we're kind of looking at an architecture like this for identity. So it would be nice to be able to figure out what would be the easiest way to flow this stuff in the additional user attributes that are not necessarily just part of an LDAP system. Just FYI. Yeah, I'd love to hear your take.
I mean, I think on the Trino side, it's what additional information do we want to attach to the identity? How does that look? Like, is it typed? Is it accessible via the SQL functions? Because like we've talked about, like, oh, maybe we should just attach the OIDC attributes to the identity. and then add functions that allow you to interact with that. And then you could put those into like row-based filters and column masks and complex things like that.
Yep.
And like have much more complex security. The real issue is like, what does that look like? You know, if we're going to feed it into SQL, like, then we got to talk types and we got to talk encodings and things like that. So it becomes a much bigger subject. But in general, I would like the ability to have information, the ability to attach these additional values to the identity so that you can use them in row filters. Like I've mentioned this a few times, like Postgres has this very powerful technique where when you connect, you can establish some additional information with that connection, and then it's used, applied to row filters. So you're like, okay, I'm connecting as customer 123, and then a filter is added automatically to every table that filters down to just customer 123. So you can do a more multi-tenant design when you have a shared system like that in like a SaaS product. It's fairly well documented design. You can imagine doing the same thing with not only like connection information like client tags, but also like OIDC attributes or information I fetched from LDAP or information I fetched from HTTP after it went. Like the actual how you actually get the information to the identity is one part of it, but the bigger part, I think, from the Trino side is how that data actually works and how structured it is and well understood. The more structured, the better it works in SQL. The less structured, the more generic you can be. So
what we've experienced, Dane, is that, you know, here we have so many different systems that identify who a person is differently. Sometimes they go on username, sometimes they go user IDs, some go on account IDs, and some want to say, oh, for this account ID coming from this IP address, right? Or this IP address block. It's really weird on how they want to be able to do these this business logic. So I'd really like to discuss kind of a design, how we would approach the problem to be able to do this kind of stuff.
From the Trino perspective, we would probably just slap a SPI interface and be like, that's your problem. That's typically how we end up handling stuff like this. Like, and because it ends up being very implementation specific. So like many OIDC providers automatically will like add tags or like the region you've logged in from or IP blocks that are marked special and things like that. And then that ends up being from our perspective, that would just come in as like data attached to the OIDC token. So like, yeah, I do think there's generally how do you get the data attached to the token versus how do you how do you get the data attached to the identity? And then like once it's attached, what can you do with it? And like, how does that work? I actually think the second part is the more difficult one to talk about.
So if the how do you attach the attributes to the identity? One thing that we were discussing when we were looking into this was why could it not follow the same logic as a group provider, where you just get called with a username that has logged in and you enrich it in whatever way you see fit?
Yeah, we were thinking of another map. I just coded up another map. I just didn't think that was going to get through Dane's peer review process without him strangling me. So, like, kind of come up with a design or an approach.
So the thing is, the attributes can come from two places. One of them is sort of, well, I'm sure they can come from many places, but the two places that we could come up with was authentication time, things like an SSO token, the claims that may be present in the JWT once you do OAuth. And the other one is the same sort of group provider thing where you log in and Trino calls out to some API and it says, give me the attributes for this user.
Yes. Yeah.
to me, one of those is preserving the information that we already have. So that would be enriching the identity so that an authenticator can attach attributes. So LDAP could do the thing that Christian wanted to do but couldn't. And the other one would just be like a group provider, right? You just call out and you return a map.
Yeah, like the way identity providers work in the SPI, they can create the entire identity, and I think that includes extra credentials, which is not great because we don't expose extra credentials on purpose. But if there is some other piece of information, they can do that. The difficulty is that it ends up being not generic then. So it's like for OIDC, you can be like, whatever, we're going to attach the tokens. We can have standard configs for that. For LDAP, like, I don't know, do you like add in a list of like, here's some LDAP queries to run and attach all that information? But
I
like,
imagine that you would need to specify the user attributes that you would want. And then you are creating some linkage between authentication and authorization. But I don't think that you can avoid it. And I mean, if you can, if someone smarter than me can, please by all means.
No,
but I think that you need to.
That actually already happens today in the SPI interface. You're creating the entire identity object. It doesn't, many of the implementations use the base thing where you're just saying like, here's the user I want, but I'm pretty sure I changed that a while ago so you could create the entire identity object.
You did. Yeah, you can. You can create it with all those has this, has that, and build it on the fly.
Yeah. I just don't think there is a bag for this data. There's just extra credentials, and extra credentials is not a great place to be putting this, because like extra credentials is designed to be literally credentials, in which case you probably don't want to have SQL access to your credentials. Like people use that to attach secret credentials the user can't see. So we probably need like some sort of like user attribute thing attached and like and then
would
like
you even want to get SQL access to these attributes?
I think you would, because then it would allow you to write row filters and column masks that pull that information.
If you're using the SQL security model.
If you're using
OPA, it's an HTTP call, right?
Except the row filters and the column masks that you're actually producing are SQL statements.
Yeah.
So it would allow you to have, I mean, obviously you could feed that over OPA and just like produce like true and false or whatever, but like it would allow you to have more generic rules and then rely on the engine to pull the information out.
Yep.
Yeah, the explain plan would leak those secrets. Yeah. You do an explain on the query, it'll leak those things.
Well, it
shows up in the row
secrets.
filters.
Well, again, there's a difference between secrets and attributes. So like the query plan would say, where logged in region is, not equal to, I don't know, or is equal to US, right? And actually, I mean, the constant folder would turn that into false, but like it could theoretically pop through. And if you didn't want to do that, then you would need to do something more complicated in your authorization system. Well, then again, the user would be able to go and say, dump out my user attributes. The point is that they wouldn't be secret. Like, I guess like you could always put them into extra credentials and access them that way, because that already exists.
Yeah, we thought you were against that though.
Sorry.
Against putting them in the extra credentials.
We're talking about two different use cases. The use case, and I'm guessing it does not apply to you, but applies to probably almost everyone else, is like, yeah, the user has attributes. I don't care if they see them. There's nothing secret about them. It says, hey, they logged in from, a region I don't want them to log in from, and therefore they can't see data. And if they want to know why, like they can go dump their attributes and just be like, you're from an insecure region or an insecure IP. You're saying, oh, I want to have these attributes, but I don't want anyone to be able to see them, only my security system. Well, then stick them in extra credentials, right?
Mm.
And then extra credentials is treated as completely private. There's no one in the system that should be logging them or in any way.
Okay,
They were literally designed for that.
that makes sense.
But then that limits the usability of them for the other case. So, which you don't care about. So
would you be open to pushing those extra credentials back into the OPA payload?
I thought we did make them available to OPA.
No, they were there originally because I was trying to use them for exactly this purpose, and then the consensus was that it was insecure to do that. I didn't know that this was actually holding secrets, right? I could guess it, but I never saw it.
Yeah, we should probably add a flag for it, would be my guess. But it's off by default. That would allow them
Okay.
to be pushed through. Yeah.
That would work. Yeah, user choice.
Or maybe you could just have a list of like, here are the ones I want pushed through. And then that list could be asterisks, all of them.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
But
But
for
in
the
general, yeah,
Mhm.
in general, extra credentials is like, you should consider that it might contain an unencrypted password. It's like there are use cases where that's what people use it for. So like you need to be careful with their handling.
I see.
Hmm.
Perhaps
Makes
an
sense.
improvement for the API that we're discussing then may either be generalizing those extra credentials such that they are a key value mapping that can have secret and non-secret values. Or
Well,
we just
the
create an
point of
entirely separate
extra
bag.
credentials is that they are entirely secret. We would just create a different bag. That would be my guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you go to GitHub, they have like environment variables now and secrets, and they're separate things. And like you can just go look at the environment variables, which is very nice. Because in the old days, you had to make everything secrets, including like, here's the host name of my, server.
Yeah.
I will just quickly add on the AWS proxy approach we came up with, and this was mostly Jordan, is that the actual class we use for identity is boundable by a plugin. That may be something interesting, especially in the row filter and like using stuff in SQL. You can come up with
I doubt that would be possible in Trino. The identity has to be like transported to a bunch of different places, and it needs to understand like what can be logged and not logged, and a bunch of other. There's just way too much structure for that.
I see.
If we did have, again, it kind of depends on what we do with these like attributes. Like, I mean, first of all, you can just make the attribute be some JSON, and you can deserialize it, do whatever you want with it. Or we can make them more structured or whatever. It's again, we haven't talked about what we want to do, but then like you could carry whatever additional information you want. I mean, you can literally do that today by sticking JSON in the extra credentials.
True.
Is there any example of using row level filters that take the username or like some dynamic attribute in order to compute the SQL statement? So for instance, you can only select rows where some column matches the username of the person running the query.
I mean, current user is it's a function. It's a syntax thing. You just say current user, and that evaluates to a varchar containing the current user's name, and then you can do whatever you want. So
Right.
you can just return that as a row filter. Works today. I think there's some other stuff that is sourced out of the identity.
I guess you could make other functions that return other things, like not extra credentials, but like attributes or whatever.
Yeah, I was just trying to think if we're going to come up with a proposal for this extra attribute, what would a sample row filter look like? Because that is something that would be convenient for us, being able to create a row filter based on an attribute.
Yeah, there's current groups, which returns a list of the current groups. So you can also like current groups contains and then a value. I swear there's a current role also as a single word statement, but I'd have to look it up. It's not in the docs.
Okay. Yeah, so for just for context, for a demo, just for a test, we came up with concatenation within OPA, right? We wanted to prove, oh, you can do this to an engineering team to show, look, if you have a table and you want to be able to filter stuff dynamically, you can do it. But you're of course doing a string concatenation in OPA, which is by far not the best approach.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a, this is Manfred controls. I'm pretty sure there's a current role. I'd have to go look in the code.
Yeah, that's probably hidden in the code, but like you could do more like that, and you could write ones where like they take an argument to like do some filtering or like only pick up some stuff out of the whole overall collection, I guess.
Yeah, we'd probably add a like, I don't know, something that's effectively like give me all the user attributes or give me this specific user attribute.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it's we have to figure out how we want it to work and the typing and stuff like that.
But basically, like how do Pablo and Christian and Eric best proceed there on that? Like
there is a
just...
current role. It's just a statement, like just like current user.
I guess
Not
that we
many
can
people use role.
We can at some point come up with a suggestion of what we would like to do. We're no experts in the internals of the core, so I'm sure that we would need some help there, but we can at least come up with a proposal and see what the community thinks.
Yeah, I have a fork that I've added the current user and stuff. I'm just trying to figure out how to populate it. But that said,
but you would need some extra stuff to be able to retrieve them using SQL, right? Which your fork doesn't have.
Yeah, my fork doesn't have the current attributes. Yeah, I agree.
That would be it. If you go look at how current users implemented in current role, it'll take you 5 seconds to add it.
No, because the interfaces are in other places too, and there's a factory generator of a factory generator. It's like, so it's a little bit of a cascade, but
for a function, for the function, no, you just get the session. You do session.identity whatever's in it, and then you return that, and you're done.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
It's pretty simple stuff.
Good point.
Cool. All discussed on that topic then?
Yeah, I think we're done. Can I ask my real question now?
Yes.
No, you're done. You used up all your credits.
Please. And I promise to go away. Can I take over the share?
Yeah,
It'd be a little bit easier. It says I cannot share when somebody else is sharing. Oh, there we go. This is the more bigger question. So this is some of our use cases where we need information out of the query planner. Effectively, what I'm trying to show here is that I have a cheap data set and I have a premium data set, right? This can be free, right? You can get the price of IBM from any source. You have this very expensive data set that is supposed to tell you, okay, what is the fair value of this particular price? So what we're kind of looking for coming out of a SQL statement is, so here I'm basically saying, take this premium data set and figure any stock that is 2 standard deviations out of the 10-day average. What this is doing is you're not directly pulling the expensive data set across the internet. You're using it as a way to filter another data set. So what we're looking for coming on the query planner was this input data used to filter, or was this input data used to derive a brand new product coming out? The reason is because we own our own data and we're trying to look at ways to monetize the usage of more premium data versus cheaper data. Do you understand? Because data comes in different tiers.
So after the query has run, you want to know something about what happened?
Yeah,
Very generally. Yes.
Very generally, I want to know, yes, what went into it, which we kind of knew, but was it used to filter or was it used to drive new data?
I don't understand the difference between the two.
Filter would mean just here, you're just selecting one data set and then try and figure something else's drive, and you're returning the cheap data, not the expensive data. In the other case, you're doing, you're joining together an expensive and a cheaper data set. There's a difference between filtering against expensive and returning the expensive. One is used at the compute side, and one's is actually returned through the SQL to the end user.
So to put another way, you're trying to find if any columns from one of the data sets made it into the output?
Effectively, yes. Or uses a derived value into those outputs, yes.
Sure.
I think that's been,
to do
I
from
think
the
that's tracked in the lineage. So in the event, I think there's a linkage. So you have the input tables. I think you have the for each expression, or either we talked about it or we already have it, or for every expression to say which columns were used to compute that expression.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I mean, it seems like a very use case specific set of things you're trying to determine. So I'm not sure we can do anything at the engine level to figure out, oh, is it useful to filter to derive something else? Like there are so many variations in the engine that is in queries that may not make it for a generic solution to be suitable here.
Yeah, I mean, we have some stuff built on the lineage that does, I mean, very different use case, but we construct the lineage like this, trace it back to input tables, including if some column is like a combination, multiple upstream columns, and that works fine.
Okay, so you use them in the lineage output in the, you're looking at the query events, right? The big blob of JSON that
query
comes.
completed events, yeah.
And you didn't have to modify anything to do that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Although, also we're not using it for like a compliance, build kind of thing. So I don't know if we've kind of validated that it works in like 100% of situations, but it certainly works in the vast majority, which is good enough for our use cases, at least.
Yeah, I know in the Starburst Galaxy product, we have lineage stuff that tracks to the column level, but I don't know the exact details either.
Okay, you gave me a lot to go on.
There's quite a lot of information in those events.
Thank you. That's a good tip.
Doug, do you want to take over next and talk about the query column limit?
Yeah. Hi. I'm Doug. I'm relatively new to the Trino community, so we're recently moving from moving off of AWS into an on-prem environment and Trino is we're using it to replace Redshift, and we do a lot of dbt transformations. And one of the problems we ran into is we get a query column limit where the query gets compiled down to bytecode, and then that bytecode is too big. Is the understanding. So, and this seems to be like a limit in the JVM that you can't have a method larger than basically 65K. So, I'm just as a newcomer to Trino, I'm just wondering like what, in my use case, I come across this with about 300 columns in a merge statement. And I know like from a previous life, like I was at Target, like we had Hive tables with like many more columns than that. So I'm just wondering if this is an issue that anybody's worried about, and if there's been any thought to like how to get around this. And I'm interested in contributing to the solution, but I'm also very new to Trino. So I look for advice, guidance as to you know, what are the thoughts around this, and if anybody else is concerned about it.
I mean, it's definitely something that we've seen. Like it's one of those issues that keeps coming back every now
Well,
and then.
there are two different things here. So one is the bytecode compiler and it hitting limits. The other one is actually very specific to the merge statement. Talked to David about this like ages ago, and he had some ideas around just actually structuring the merge statements differently, because they're doing the way they're presented in the plan, it basically explodes all the columns into these filters, and they're actually not needed, if I remember. And so he had an idea about like maybe switching that, but I honestly don't remember the details. It was a long time ago. On the bytecode stuff, I have some ideas about where we can go with the bytecode stuff. It's a problem I've been looking at for literally like 7 years or so, and it's actually a very difficult problem. But I think I have a better approach. It's just going to take some time to figure it out. The naive approach is like you generate your bytecode and then it's ginormous, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just split it in half. And that approach is basically impossible. Like method splitting. If you go search around, there are a number of people that have taken tries at this, who are even who are a lot more skilled than me, and I don't think anyone has actually successfully built a generic algorithm for splitting.
Can we fall back to the interpreted code rather than the
interpreter is like 100 times slower.
Well, and the interpreter doesn't really run at it's only for planning. Like we use it only for analysis and planning. So
yeah. I think the better approach is, while you still have the tree, the bytecode tree in the bytecode library, you run an algorithm to walk the tree bottom up, and if you run into estimated bytecode that's too large, you introduce a function at that point. Because the way the tree works, you can do that, I believe.
So I mean, we are looking at other things. I mean, we've been looking at so as part of Project Hummingbird, change the way we evaluate expressions to be able to do subtrees at a time, and that would be an inherent attribute of the evaluation strategy. And if you look at the issue with the bytecode limits is it's not because you have a single expression that has references to so many columns that it causes problems. It's because you have so many expressions, independent expressions, like you have each projection, each filter, and combined, they end up going over the limit. So
you also have the case where the expression is actually just too large. So I think what Martin's getting at is there actually are a bunch of different approaches. So like the thing I'm talking about is like, well, you decided to generate bytecode and oof, it's really large. What do you do, right? There's better solutions further up the stack. The further up the stack, the better the solution you can get. Today in the filter and project code, each projection output column is a separate compiled thing, and and then the filters compiled thing, and then Martin was looking at sub-splitting inside of them at conjuncts, if I remember. That would further reduce it, because normally it's conjuncts that kill you because they're like super huge, especially in where clauses. But case statements can also be a nightmare because people use code generators to create case statements, and they're just ginormous. anyways, it's a very complex problem. The answer is that normally this stuff gets worked on when it's either really egregious or like someone has some free time. Because like it's not a common thing to care about or run into. It's pretty uncommon because like the system has been tuned to get rid of all the like really common use cases. I think in this case, people don't use merge statements very often, would be my guess. Because the number you stated isn't a large number. It's like, what, 150 columns or something like that?
Yeah, it might like
300 columns.
300
Yeah.
columns. That's not a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, if I remember, merge might explode the nested columns also. I don't know. There's something weird about it also.
Oh, the problem is you have to effectively have to do a select star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the Spark project has worked through a lot of these issues as well, and it's all been use case specific. Dane, as you were talking about, with similar to like the filtering, it's all been, you know, very tailored to the specific operation. Nothing more generic, like you were mentioning with like a bottom-up approach.
Yeah, I think we can do a bottom-up approach because we have our own bytecode library. I don't know what they do. They probably use like something off the shelf.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like you actually write, you don't generate bytecode, you actually write like Java code as text in string constants and then run it through a compiler. It's a little hokey, but
that's yeah, it's pretty early 2000s tech though.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, so this sounds like there's a couple different ways to attack this problem, and like you said, the bytecode issue is
Are you affected by the merge statement mostly?
Yeah, right. I'm affected by the merge. Luckily, there's only like I have some I think I can get around. I think I can split the table up into two tables and then do a join when I query it. But which that's like will get me past this initial problem. But I'm just worried about it like further down the road. So
yeah,
and
I would ping David Phillips on Slack. Like
David Phillips?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah. I was talking to David Phillips. I know Stryker also kind of worked on this stuff, but David, I have a memory of talking to him about actually this exact problem. Like, but it was like 6 months ago. So yeah, I'd ping him on the troubleshooting or the dev channel. Well, probably the dev like, well, since this is like actually you working on Trino core dev, yeah, say like, hey, I'd like to look at this problem. And you say like Dane mentioned, you might be able to provide some insights.
Okay. I mean, I also think that like DBT is pretty common. My impression is DBT is pretty common and people are using it. I just don't, you know, so.
Also,
yeah.
the merge statement is relatively new, but I'm sure it's getting more traction rather than less over time. So,
yeah,
it's definitely something it's worth looking at. I can help establish a communication with David and you, and I'll run the issue and stuff.
Great. Thank you.
Cool. Incredibly, we are at time. Is there anything anyone wants to urgently quickly talk about, or do we need to like have another session sooner than in a month's time, or what's everyone's thought here?
Oh, I can come up with some long topics, but I don't think they're relevant right now.
I knew I
We
could rely
never
on you.
doubted you, Eric.
You're speaking from experience, right, Pablo, with dealing with me?
Yeah, exactly.
Eric, Manish.
Yeah.
Lukas, Mateusz. Also, Saravan, I think you good?
Yeah, Manfred, thank you. Yeah, I just joined like a bit late, and yeah, and not right now. I don't have anything to discuss right now. Maybe next meeting.
Okay, cool.
Cool, thanks.
All right, well, I guess then we can wrap it up. I will make the recording available and make the notes available, and I will see you soon.
Thanks,
Thank
Manfred.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right.